It's great to have you join us in this episode of Wellbeing here on AD4 TV Radio. My name is Anthonyetta Kalunta. On this episode, we're going to take a look at albinism and the societal challenges associated with it. Joining us to give us deeper insight on this topic is a man who believes that Nigerians with albinism are on the verge of overcoming age-long stigma and inequalities, thanks to advocacy efforts by various organizations to empower people with albinism and also to teach and educate society on albinism. His name is Jake Ekpele, the founder of the Albino Foundation. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. So to delve right into it, we would like to know, when it comes to albinism, is there a particular definition to know that this is what albinism is? So we don't see people who are light-skinned and, just assume that because you are this light-skinned, you must be an albino.
Albinism is a rather complex issue and complex definition in the sense that a lot of people have different notions about albinism and what albinism is. Let me address the issue of albino. The reason why the community tend to shy away from using the phrase albino is because in the family of albinism, unknown to many people, there are trees with albinism, there are rats with albinism, there are whales with albinism. It's about the entire creation. And so the definitive word that defines every of the creation within the family of albinism is albino or albinistic body. Now, that phrase is used to define all of the creation. So if you use it to define human, that's a bit of an unfair description. And so for the community of persons with albinism who are human, we've decided to shift, and this is a United Nations Charter, to shift the nomenclature from albino to person with albinism. And so the definition is simple. In a layman, I'm not a medical doctor, I hope you know that. In a layman definition, albinism is simply an individual, when it comes to humanistic, is an individual who have varying quantity, and I choose my word, of melanin. Melanin is the chemical responsible for coloration. And that's the mighty work of God that men are still trying to grapple with. Melanin chemical is in every part of human creation. It's in your eyes, it's in your ears, it's in your nose, it's in your bloodstream, it's in your lungs. It is a vital component of human embodiment that makes us human. And so for a person with albinism, contrary to what people say, they say, oh, because we lack melanin. We don't lack melanin. Any human being that lacks melanin is not human. All right, so what happens to a person with albinism is that we have it at a varying quantity, very small quantity. And I use the word varying because you find that, like my colleague who came to your studio with me, he seems to be a bit darker, if you take a hard look at us, than myself. So I tend to have a bit of less melanin than he does. So when you have that, you are placed in two categories. You're placed in what is referred to as ocular. All right, that means ocular. The individual who is ocular albinism is one that have more melanin on his or her skin and more melanin on his or her hair, but less melanin in her eyes or his eyes. All right, so that's from the word ocular, has to do with eyes. Now there is another category which is oculocutaneous. All right, oculocutaneous. So it's a combination of two words. Okay, ocular, cutaneous, which means ocular, eyes, cutaneous, skin. But the interesting thing here is that this skin has a less melanin component. All right, and so when you do that, you are referred to as oculocutaneous person with albinism. And I'm one, and within the category of oculocutaneous, there are other shades of albinism, which means OCA1, OCA2, OCA3, OCA4. There's an ongoing research that is stretching it to even 7 different categories. And I want to say here on record that I am one person with albinism, and I'm very comfortable with my albinism, and I thank God every day for making me one.
Because it makes you different.
Who I am. If I'm anything less than who I am, then I'll be a misfit.
Actually, yes. Most times we always have to call for, as much as, that's why I'm interested in this topic, and I believe that's why we're putting this out, because we need to get people comfortable in who they are and stop projecting what they should be or our expectations on them. So I know a lot of people are curious, so we would like to know, are there specific health challenges people with albinism face?
Well, yes, but then that doesn't make us anything different. Everybody has their health issues. Everybody have, there's a saying that everyone suffers from one disability or the other. In terms of persons with albinism, we have 2 major health challenges. One is our sight, and it will interest you to know that for persons with albinism, our sight till date, till this minute that I'm talking to you, the scientists have not found remedy for our sight. I'm wearing glasses. You think that the glasses does help me. It doesn't. The only thing that it does sometimes is like it shades me from this powerful light getting into my eyes, sun getting into my eyes, and all that. But in terms of helping me to read, and all that, very little, very, very little assistance I can get from. So there's no, till date, there's been no medical remedy for our sight. Now, let me talk to you about what happened to our eyes. The same melanin that you need on your skin, you also need in your eyes. And what happened was that because we don't have enough melanin in our eyes, it sort of hindered to an appreciable extent the performance of our retina. So when there's light, like you have this light now, getting into our retina, it sort of diminishes the performance, and we're not able to picture an object and see it in totality. The only way we can is that we have to go close to that object and squint. And that's why you see all of us went to school. We have to be kept at the front of the desk. We have to go to the blackboard to see what is written and come back to write it. Many of us in occasions, we miss even recognizing our wives. It has happened to me, and recognizing people. So tomorrow, I may just see you and pass. And for anybody, you may conclude that, oh, he's very proud and pompous. He doesn't want to greet me. The problem is that I don't recognize you, and I don't want to be embarrassed by reaching out to the wrong person. So people who have come to understand this will just come to you and say, hey, Jake, I'm Jessica, I'm John, and then sometimes I pretend, oh, yeah, I know you, But the thing is, it is in the voice that we recognize more. That's why people say, oh, persons with albinism were very brilliant and all that. We use our memory more than we use our eyes. So that has to do with the eyes. So we struggle with our eyes. The second thing is our skin. Now, because we have less melanin, okay, we tend to attract radiation more than those with melanin. And attracting that radiation, you find a situation where it destroys our skin layers. So we're down with skin cancer. I'm a survivor of skin cancer. You know, we are down with skin cancer. And early detection of that can help anyone. But if it's not detected early, you sign your death warrant. So skin cancer, it's a major challenge in terms of health. There are other kinds of issues, most of them depending on the region where you come from. If you're from Japan, you deal with Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome, which is an internal stomach diseases that you have to deal with as a result of albinism. And for those of us who are here, we're dealing with the effect of the sun, and Australia as well. You know, they're dealing with the effect of the sun, and of course, the aftermath is skin cancer.
Wow. You're watching Wellbeing, and we have our guest, Jake Ekpele, who's the founder of the Albino Foundation, and he's giving us more insights, on albinism and the societal challenges, health challenges that people with albinism have to face. We'll go on a quick break, and when we return, more details. Stay with us. You're welcome back. This is Wellbeing, and on this episode we're viewing albinism and the challenges associated with it. Our guest today is Jake Ekpele, who is the founder of the Albino Foundation. Before we went on the break, he was reviewing to us the health challenges that people with albinism face. And right now he's going to be telling us something that I feel like if you've heard about albinism or you've seen a person with albinism, it's a question you've always wanted to ask. We would like to know today, sir, is there any effect of having pink eyes as a person with albinism? Is it different when someone has brown or blue? Are there any differences?
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, not only persons with albinism that have pink eyes or blue eyes, everyone, it's not something that's specifically meant for persons with albinism. Anybody can have any kind of eyes, but unfortunately, many of us, the reason why a lot of people tend to give all kinds of coloration about our eyes is exactly the same thing I said before, the measurable melanin in our eyesight. For instance, if you want to do a biometrics, you won't be able to catch my retina as a person with albinism, you know, because it shies away from the light, so it will not be able to give a detailed picture of what is in my eyes, you know. So it depends. It depends. I don't know what the color of my own eyes is, but it's not necessarily associated with albinism that a particular color of eyes is in an individual. So it depends on who, what kind of color that your own eyes is. I don't know what you think. What's the color of my own eyes? Can you see?
Like brown. Okay,
so you don't see too, like I don't see.
Okay, sir, so for us to backtrack a bit, I'd like to know, how does albinism really occur? Because we've seen instances where some couples do not have it, and then they give birth to a child and the child has it. For some, they give birth to 4 children and 3 out of 4 have albinism.
Or even 1.
Or just 1. So what really happens?
I think this is a very intelligent question. See, the thing about albinism is a recessive gene. So it jumps from one generation to another. And sometimes it can escape one generation and show up in another. For instance, my mom and my dad. My mom is just as brownish as you. My dad is really black, you know, ebony black, good-looking gentleman, you know. And so I happen to be the only person with albinism in the whole family, you know. So I have my own children. None of them have albinism. My wife and I wish we had one, but we don't. It could be that our children will have one. So it's, and then secondly, this is an interesting part. If I have a woman, if I have a wife who is equally a gene carrier, or albinism gene carrier, automatically both of us will have one. If I have a wife like I do, who doesn't have the gene, but I do, we may escape not having a child with albinism. But then the beautiful thing is that I've never seen, and I'm being brash here, I've never seen any person with albinism that had a child who is not good looking. All our children are good looking. Yes. I'm telling you, believe me, good looking. So I think the mutation has a way of producing the very best in human.
Yes, yes.
And that will make you. Can I ask you a question? Will you marry a person with albinism? Be honest.
If I like the person.
If you like the person, okay. All right.
It has to do with the person, like I said.
Okay. And what about you?
What about me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I don't get your question.
Why wouldn't it have to do with you?
Well, I'm the one choosing here, so I would choose a person I like.
Who says? That's selfish. All right, go ahead.
But still looking at symptoms of albinism, are there any other symptoms that are not particularly physical?
Nothing yet. Like I said, it's gene. Once two people who are carrier of the gene meets, they produce a person with albinism. Like, if the gene is not in my dad and is not in my mom, I wouldn't have been a person with albinism. So my mom has to be a positive carrier, my dad has to be a positive carrier for me to be a full-fledged person with albinism. All right. So if one is a carrier and the other one is not, you find a slight shade of a child with albinism. But truth be told, all of our children are gene carriers. And if they just meet a woman or a man who is a positive carrier, they will have a full-fledged person with albinism.
Okay, sir. What about freckles? There are so many stories associated with why some people with albinism have freckles and some others do not.
Everybody with albinism will have freckles if you expose yourself. Freckles is not what makes you a person with albinism. Freckles is, it comes on an individual who did not take care of himself or herself by way of undue exposure in the sun. Freckles are something that comes. Freckles are, let me give you a little bit of a medical history of freckles. Freckles is simply the sun trying to force a fake melanin on your skin. Yeah, it's the sun trying to force, to give you a pseudo melanin, So anybody with albinism that exposes himself or herself unduly under the sun, you will have a freckle. And the thing about freckle is a cumulative effect. It takes time. I'm 60. Don't I look good at 60?
You do.
Okay. I'm 60. And you see the effect of that bad behavior, indiscipline, that I didn't know better to stay away from the sun, is what you're seeing today, By the time I knew the effect of this and started curtailing it, it's become too late. So if I put up my clothes, I have freckles all over, but I try to ensure that I try to control what happens on my face in particular. Yeah, but anybody with albinism can have freckles if you expose yourself in the sun. So for you not to have freckles, get away from the sun. And plus, these lights fluorescence. They are also producers of freckles, not only for persons with albinism, but for everybody, including you. The more you stay under these high voltage lights, the more your skin will damage.
Wow. Thank you for enlightening us, Jake.
Thank you.
Okay, so talking about diet, are there special dietary considerations for people with albinism?
Nothing. Where do you come from?
Abia State, Nigeria.
Okay, let's say you like oha soup. Oha. We eat, bottom line, we eat everything. There's no particular food that is a no-go area for a person with albinism. But let me address one myth, and that myth is salt.
Salt, I was just about to ask.
Aha, salt. Please, if you're watching this program and you have albinism or you know anybody with albinism, it is false not to ask a person with albinism to put edible salt in his or her food. As a matter of fact, if you do that, you're actually killing the person. Salt has nothing to do with any challenges with anybody in albinism. Taking away salt from us, one of the problems that we have after effect of the undue exposure in the sun and the UVA and UVB effect on persons with albinism is that it diminishes our immune system. Take for instance, if you sweat or you run and you notice that you try to catch your breath, so it diminishes our immune system. Salt has iron, and salt helps to build your immune system. And I'm not saying please do not go and pack salt and put in your food. And no, that's not. Eat it just like you will, a measurable quantity that you need in your food. Don't deny any person with albinism any type of food. We can eat anything. I don't like pepper. I can eat food without pepper.
That's just your individual preference.
Exactly. It has nothing to do with my albinism.
Okay, still talking about myths. Are there other myths associated with albinism that you'd like to debunk?
Do you have all the time? I don't.
Okay, one. The worst you've heard.
Well, myths like if a woman who is pregnant sees a person with albinism, she will have that child. I suffered that myth because my uncle's wife will not let me come to her house because she's pregnant, and she's told that once she sees me, she's going to have a person with albinism. It's a myth. It has nothing, there's no truth in it. There are myths that you had a person with albinism because you probably made love with your husband during your period. It's a myth. There's no truth about it. There are myths like, oh, we are gods, and please. There are myths that we're ghosts. There are myths that we disappear. And I'm still here with you. Have I disappeared? So those are, and that's the truth about, and that's the power of what you're doing. To debunk myth, tell the truth. We have just released a book at the foundation, Frequently Asked Questions. So it's all about myth in albinism and the truth in albinism. So yeah, there are many myths, many myths, all kinds of lies, and and some of those myths you can find them in the names that we are called. You are Igbo, you say Onyocha Furuzo, which is fallacy. So it's another word is unfortunate European, and I'm asking the person who is saying that, how fortunate are you? There are myths from I think Calabar people seems to have one of the worst myths, or Cross River. No, Akwa Ibom and Cross River. They say Mbakara Oborikot. They actually equate us to wild goat from the bush because of the spots. The Benin say Evo, which is derogatory. The Yorubas says Afi, which is derogatory. The Hausa says Zebia, and all of those things. Yes, the Anambra people say Anyari. You know, there are all kinds of names that are associated with albinism, which is responsible for the superstitious beliefs that we have to deal with on a daily basis.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jake. So I would like to know, what are your final words on what you believe society can do to ensure that we end these negative stereotypes?
Let me take it from a very philosophical point of view. And it's not only for persons with albinism, it's for everyone. The day you were born, you cried, and everybody around you rejoiced. We must live our life so well that the day we die, we will rejoice, and everyone around us will cry. That's a life of contribution. And that life is not on the basis of the color of your skin, not on the basis of your creed, not on the basis of who you what you are, but it is something that everybody has to do so that you will leave a legacy when you exit this world. So whether you're a person with albinism, a person with disability, a woman, a man, you owe this generation to leave what God has created you to do on the sand of time so that you will be remembered. Let me give you something that may sound scary. My advice to everybody and to myself is announce your obituary before you die, so that people can go back and remember you for what you left behind.
Thank you so much, Jake. It has been a really enlightening episode with Jake Ekpele, the founder of the Albino Foundation. Thank you for staying till the end of this episode, and always remember that people with albinism might have an alternate shading, but they have similar souls like ours, and we must acknowledge them as a normal piece in society. See you next time.